dedication this evening, and Judy Dewar, our library director, will lead us in our pledge of allegiance. Pastor, welcome. Good to see you.
From Matthew chapter 22, a lawyer asked Jesus a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment of the law? He said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbors yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. God has designed human life quite carefully. He's created us to live in two kinds of relationships, with himself, with each other. He created us to praise and serve him through the care of other people. And he did so guided by his love. We pray. Heavenly Father, you are the guardian and keeper of your people. We pray that you will watch over those who have gathered here this day to go about the business of governing. Bless our community servants with your presence and guidance, those who pass our laws, those who enforce our laws, those who serve the sick, those who teach the young, those who provide jobs, those who work at their vocations, those who minister with your word. Protect our community from recession and depression, from epidemic and pollution, from poor government and civil unrest, from drought and flood and from fire and storm. Help each of us as citizens to work for the common good through new and useful technologies, through beneficial regulations, through gainful employment, through wholesome recreation, through good manufacturing, through meaningful education, through compassionate care of the young and old. Father God, send your Holy Spirit to give us all the grace to obey and trust your word, allowing it to mold our thoughts and actions and not the reverse. We pray this in the name of Jesus, knowing you'll hear us, dear Father. Amen.
Amen.
Together with you. Yes. No.
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on our agenda is a special recognition. And tonight we are going to get to recognize our Temple Public Library for receiving the Achievement of Excellence in Libraries Award from the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association. We have with us Ms. Lisa Youngblood, the Library Director for the City of Harker Heights, this evening to make that presentation. Would you come forward, please?
I'd like to ask my staff to come up.
I hope so. Absolutely. Wait, I fix you up. I do not.
As the Library Director of the Harker Heights Public Library, I'm Lisa Youngblood. I'm also the President-elect of the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association, which is an affiliate of the Texas Municipal League. I am here today. I'm so excited to be able to come again to award to the City of Temple and to the Temple Public Library the Excellence in Library Service Award for 2011. In order to receive this award, you must exhibit excellence in not one, not two, not three, but 10 areas of library service. You also must be able to turn in a very sizable amount of information to support the fact that you have absolutely exhibited that excellence. And also, I'd like to let everyone know that this is not an honor easily received. Out of the 565 libraries, public municipal libraries in the state of Texas, only 26 libraries are going to be receiving this award this year. So today I'd like to come and present that award to Judy Dewar and to the staff and the City of Temple.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you making that long trip from Harker Heights to present it to us. She's done this 3 years in a row, and we do appreciate that. As I said, my staff is who does the work, and so I wanted at least a representative sample of them to be here for this. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. We have a wonderful public library, and it just keeps getting better all the time. So Judy, thanks to you, thanks to all of you for a very important part of our community and making us proud once again of our library services. Thank you. Ms. Youngblood, thanks very much for joining us again. Excuse me. Next item on the agenda is an opportunity for public comment. Citizens who desire to address the council on any item may sign up to do so prior to the meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the council. I'd like to call first Mr. Larry Robinson. Mr. Robinson, if you'd step to the podium there.
My name is Larry Robinson. I'm a resident of Temple for 12 years now. I was divorced, father and mom, and I live in a house in which I'm the sole occupant. And I live at 1506 South 45th Street.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm presently in a dispute with the utility department. They increased my sewer rate more than 4 times. And the rationale for doing this makes no sense to me. So I've talked to 2 people over at the utility department, and I've talked to the deputy city attorney about this matter, and hopefully they will do some investigating and give me some facts that I can hang on to. But my present sewer rate is approximately equal to my water consumption rate. When you think about this, bear in mind that I'm one person. I've got a busted hot water heater, so there's no water going through that. And so, this is my effluent discharge into the Temple sewer system is more than 4 times what it was at the beginning of the year. And so I informed the supervisor at the utility department that if the matter wasn't resolved to my satisfaction, that I would sue. And that's what I intend to do. Before I leave this meeting tonight, I would like to get my council member and also the Temple city manager involved in this dispute. To that end, I'm giving them a copy of my complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you.
Next person is Mr. Thomas Hill. Mr. Hill? If you come forward to the podium, please, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm hard of hearing, I just barely hear what you're saying.
All right, sir. If you would state your name and address for the record, please, before you make your comment. If you please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Thomas Hill. I live at 635 County Road 220, Gatesville, Texas, and that's about north of Gatesville, about 16 miles. Of course, in the past, I've lived here in Temple. I wouldn't mind living here again. And what I'm here about is I got a letter from the code enforcement people, and I have contact. I think I talked to Joe, is it First? That seems I've looked at F-U-R-S-T. How he spelled his last name?
It's Kim Faust.
Anyway, I've had contact with him. Now, I don't have no beef with what they got. But I just wanted to give all the, kind of what the problem is. This involves 1702 Sycamore. And of course, that property still don't even have sewer, and have water, but we don't have sewer out there. And they cited high grass. Okay, there's 4 acres in that lot. It had all been mowed with the exception of down the bar ditch on the north side. And people, it's dangerous to get on that with a lawnmower, even with a tractor. I used to mow it. When I lived there, I mowed it with a small 25 horsepower tractor. And then, of course, I had a regular riding lawnmower in it. And I'd like to invite any y'all to bring the lawnmower out there, and I'd like to watch y'all mow that ditch. But the city cleaned the ditch out 2 times while I was living over there. And of course, they helped the water drainage situation's reason why they cleaned it out. And of course, that made the ditch deeper and straighter sides. And the little tractor I had to stand up and run over this way to keep the wheel on the high side on the ground. And I don't expect the people living there to do such as that, to mow that ditch. Now, the city mowed it for a while, and so I quit mowing it because of the danger and tearing the equipment up. And this letter says we're no longer going to do that, or no longer doing it. And if the city would work with just Joe first or me and go in and shape that ditch where it would be safe to ride lawnmower, that everybody, the present mayor there, wouldn't mind mowing the ditch at all. And I don't recommend it to, and I told them to not mow it because of the danger involved. Now, the ditches on the south side of the road are shaped where people can get in there and mow it. And I just hope that if there's anybody from the right department that attends to that, if they're here, of course, I wouldn't mind talking to them. And try to work something out if we could get the city to go in and shape that ditch where it'd be safe to get over the line. And then this is all, like I say, I'm not really beefing about it, but, well, I guess I am too, but I want to, like I say, I want to work with the city, and because I enjoy living in Temple when I lived here. And I still will.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Hill. You can come back anytime. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda are budget-related items. First is a public hearing, and we'll receive a presentation by the city manager and conduct a public hearing on the proposed 2012-2013 operating budget. That's 4A. 4B is to discuss the proposed tax rate and consider adopting a resolution scheduling the adoption of the proposed tax rate for August 30th of 2012. The first item will be the presentation and public hearing, and the second item will, as we discussed before, require very specifically worded action. And so we'll take item 4A, and Mr. Blackburn, your presentation, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go through the presentation fairly quickly. I'll be happy to stop anywhere council would like and answer questions or talk about it, and certainly afterwards if that's council's desire. Again, tonight, it's about setting the preliminary tax rate. The presentation that you're about to see is very similar to the one you saw on July 5th, where I presented it to you following the filing of the preliminary budget. Really 4 topics that I'll go through very quickly: the calendar, the fence post, strategic plan, very quick funds overview, and then just highlight a couple of areas in the budget. Next slide, please. There's your budget calendar. As you'll note, that's the looking backwards is how I entitled that slide over the calendar. Their budget process is really year-round as we start each budget year. November, December is when we started looking at the calendar, the processes, the issues. We go through leadership retreats, council retreats. March through June is really a lot of staff work on the budget. And then June 29th, of course, filed the budget. And in the month of July, we had council workshops where you identified about 6 topics that we worked through during that process. Next slide. And then looking forward from tonight on August 2nd, we'll set the preliminary tax rate tonight, and public hearing also on the budget. August 10th, public hearing on the tax rate, and then announce the meeting to adopt the tax rate. August 16th, your second public hearing on the tax rate, and then, August 30th, adopt a budget and set a tax rate to support that. Next slide, please. The fence post, each year I ask you early in our budget process for some guidelines or some markers that I use as staff develops the budget. Those vary just a little bit from time to time each year, but those are the four that we set this year: maintaining your fiscal soundness, maintaining our core services, focusing on our people, and then aligning our strategic, our financial, and our tactical plans. So all of those continue to be part of the budget process as we started. Next slide, please. That's a visual representation of your strategic plan, and again, you've seen that multiple times, so I won't spend a lot of time on it tonight, but a couple of items that I would highlight on there is the serving our community and improving our infrastructure in terms of the focus areas, because I'll mention those again just momentarily here as we dive into a couple of the budget highlights. Next slide. Funds overview. This is the numbers portion of the presentation, and again, I'll let Tracy jump in anywhere she would like also, but there's your combined statement, sources, use of funds slide. I won't go through any. I'm going to highlight a few things off of that slide in the next 3 or 4 slides. What I'd highlight at the bottom of that slide is that your overall revenues are projected to increase under this budget about 4.25% over your FY12 budget, your current budget, and overall expenses are projected to increase about 2.4% over your current budget. And then you see all of the funds that are listed there. Again, 7 or 8 funds that we list there, and then the total dollar amount. And again, I remind you from time to time that the city is a $100 million plus corporation. I mean, that's the nature of our business, and those funds reflect that. Next slide. For your general fund on the revenues, your adopted budget revenues this year are a little over $55 million, 55.7. The preliminary budget identifies approximately $57.6 million in revenues, about a $1.9 million difference. That's a 3.42% increase in revenues, attributable in large part to projections in our sales tax. As you've seen our economic indicators report on the trend we've had over the past several months. I think 20 of the last 21 or 21 of the last 22 months we've seen increases in our sales tax, so that gives us some optimism for our sales tax revenue. And then our property tax also is projected to increase, again, primarily based on assessed values and appraised values that we've seen from the appraisal district. Next slide. Expenditures, your FY12 adopted budget has $58.7 million in the general fund for expenditures. FY13, about $59 million in projected expenditures for next year. That's a $339,000 increase, less than a 0.5% increase in expenses overall in your general fund. That's attributable to multiple things, savings and increases, decreases across several areas. I highlighted 4 of those areas, but the spreadsheet has actually got 15 or 20 or 30 different areas where we've had adjustments in our general fund. So I just selected 4 just as a sample to show you. But you have some additional public safety positions. We have some frozen positions. Seal coat operations, we're proposing to fund that through your transportation CIP. There's a different approach to how we're going to do some of the maintenance, so that's some savings. And then your capital fund balance and a decrease there. So again, that's just intended to give you some representative numbers in areas in terms of where those savings are. Next slide. Revenues in the water and sewer fund. $26.8 million this year, approximately $28.6 next year is projected, and that's that increase in revenues. Again, your water and sewer fund is rate-based, so rate adjustments impact revenues significantly, and that's where that 6.84% or 6.39% and 6.84% increase in revenues is related to a rate adjustment for next year being proposed. Next slide. On the expenditure side, $27.2 million this year, $28.3 next year, about $1 million. That represents about a 4% increase in expenditures attributable to those, primarily those 3 factors, that you see in the bottom half of that chart there. $682,000 is an adjustment in the rate recovery methodology that Finance has worked with an outside consultant on that reflects a better recovery method for us. Our systems operations, positions, and O&M, also some increases in that area, and then cash CIP program that we use through the operating budget, so $506,000 there. Next slide. unreserved fund balance, one of our fence posts is to maintain fiscal soundness. In fact, that's our first fence post, and it's the one that's probably the deepest in the process in terms of being sound and secure financially. That means, in part, having a consistent policy for the use of our unreserved funds. Capital expenditures, our CIS incentives, our economic development matrix funding, and our grant match funding are all eligible expenses under that policy, and your budget reflects that again this year. Next slide. This is just details some of those expenditures. Your FY13 budget includes the use of that unreserved fund balance for the following: capital in the amount of $773,000, the TEDC matrix, which is really a placeholder amount. We don't determine that amount until really sometime toward the end of next month, I think, is when that trues up. But that's a placeholder amount, but we're estimating around $400,000. And then your CIS, or Strategic Investment Zone money, at $100,000. Next slide. Here's your fund balance history and the FY13 forecast, which is, again, embedded in the preliminary budget. If you look back over that, we range anywhere from $1.6 million to $3 million supplement to the budget, and available balances have ranged anywhere from 1.2 to a little over $4 million. We're projecting for FY13 and the revenues and expenses that are proposed that our available fund balance would be around 2.4, which is within the ranges that we've had in the past. Next slide. Under budget highlights and issues, there's really two areas that I've focused on over the course of our discussions this summer, and that's been public safety services and transportation infrastructure. Your public safety services and transportation infrastructure have been really critical points for us over the past several years, and you've heard me say before that those are two areas that your operating budget and your CIP programs with regard to the transportation infrastructure have really been invested in significantly over the course of many, many, many years, and public safety is no exception to that. Your FY13 budget proposes 2 additional police officers to augment our CID, or Criminal Investigations Division, 3 additional firefighters to provide some rover positions to better address our minimum staffing level coverages and help address some of the overtime issues that we have in the current budget, and 1 additional animal control officer to better address our current service level expectations. We've not added ACO, animal control officer position, in many, many, many years. And of course, the service levels have been increasing substantially over the years. But those, all 5 of those positions are public safety-related positions, and your budget address those. We can fund those with a very minimal impact to the tax rate, about less than a penny, about 0.6% is what the proposed tax rate provides. Next slide. Your transportation infrastructure, FY13 preliminary budget proposes $60.1 million transportation CIP program. I think that's the most significant transportation CIP effort probably we have ever undertaken. The TCIP would be multi-year in approach. We could not and would not spend or invest that $60.1 million in 1 year, even if we wanted to. So the approach is multi-year, and implementation is multi-year. It is also multimodal in nature. We're intending to address, as I put on the slide, 4 wheels, 2 wheels, and no wheels. So it's intended to look at both our vehicular transportation needs, but also our bicycles and cycling, as well as our pedestrian movement in and around the city. So it truly is, I think, also for the first time, multimodal in nature as opposed to a singular mode of effort. And it's also multifaceted in terms of the needs that we're trying to address. There's rehabilitation, reconstruction, and maintenance projects and efforts in this TCIP, as well as capacity and connectivity that are also being addressed. So a truly multifaceted, multimodal, multi-year approach. Next slide. That's a list of the projects. I know that's probably difficult to see, but maybe from around the room you can see that. We posted this already, I believe, on our website in previous presentations, so we'll be happy to provide that. But that's a list of the projects, the sequence of the years that they would come into play. And I won't go through those. I'd be happy to address questions, and I also have Mr. Newman here from Public Works who can address questions if you have individual questions about any projects. Next slide. That's a map, which is even more challenging to see on the screens, but again, we have posted this. I also have a map, a static display in the room that provides a little bit easier on the eyes in terms of audience members anyway, so you can kind of see where projects flow. But I think that's a very good visual just to kind of give you a background and a backdrop of just how broad and how deep this TCIP spans across the community, north, south, east, west, multiple projects in multiple areas. Next slide. So with that said, your FY13 preliminary budget proposes funding these public safety positions as well as the TCIP with 1.85 cent increase in the current tax rate. Your current tax rate is 0.5679 cents per $100 valuation. Your FY13 proposed tax rate to support the TCIP and public safety positions would be 0.5864 cents. Next slide. This is a chart that you see every year that we provide that just also gives a little bit of a visual of the current tax rate, how the M&O and the INS portion of that tax rate break out, and then what the total tax rate would be, and then the change to that. And then on the left-hand side, the increase, what that would do to a $100,000 home would be $1.54 a month. And just as a point of reference, your 2001 tax rate was $59.22, I think, if I can read the chart from here. Next slide. Very quickly, I want to mention water and sewer, also a significant part of our budget and a significant part of the investment that we make in public works. More than half of our utilities that we have in the ground are more than half a century old. That's not such a good thing. Our city has also experienced significant growth over the past decade, approximately 20% over the past decade in terms of population growth, and that's a good thing. Both of those factors, however, necessitated an ambitious and needed CIP program in our water and sewer, our utility areas, to the tune of about almost $60 million over the past 5 years. Very ambitious and significant investment we've made in a relatively short period of time. But again, as the slide indicates, a needed thing for much of our infrastructure. Next slide. We do need to continue improving our system, our utility system. The budget provides for approximately $33.6 million over the next 5 years as recommended. Additionally, our water treatment plant staffing levels have not been addressed in several years, so the budget proposes 4 additional positions at our water treatment plant in order to better protect both the facilities, but it's equally important and perhaps more so the safety of the personnel that are operating that plant. There are many, many times when we have an extremely limited staff at our water treatment plant, and as the council and the community is very well aware, that's a very critical piece of infrastructure for this state. Next slide. There are some cost drivers for the rate adjustment that's being proposed in the water and sewer. Again, I've mentioned those already, but our new accounting methodology, the O&M costs that we need to address there, as well as the CIP program that I just mentioned. What the budget proposes is a $4, again, as you're familiar, our rate structure for our water and sewer is not necessarily a simple equation. There are tiers, there are different rates, there are different size meters, different volumetrics, those kinds of things. The short version is a $4 monthly increase for the average residential water customer is proposed. That should carry the system until 2017. So we have also had a history of reassessing our rates about every 3, 4, 5 years. That's when we look at our CIP program and our O&M needs and then forecast those out. So we believe that this rate adjustment would carry us until that. Most of the rate increase, again, is attributable to that methodology in terms of the singular factor to the updating of our cost recovery model. Next slide. I want to say very quickly, or mention briefly anyway, that we also provide in this budget, as we have in each budget for many, many years, leveraging our resources with other private and public sector entities. The process that we call our Public Service Agency Grant Process, or PSAs, always very significant. I always want to highlight that in these presentations. This budget is no different. 20 grants to 18 agencies is recommended, a range of programs and services in our community, and you see the list there, from transit to health to recreation to arts and culture to education, child care, tourism, transitional housing, job training, emergency shelter. All of those service areas and program areas, we leverage city funds with public and private funds to deliver those programs and services. And that's significant, even though in the grand scheme of a $100 million budget, the total dollar amount is not a significant percentage. The leveraging that takes place is very significant. So I always want to highlight that as we go through this budget process. Next slide. And that slide you'll see on one sheet, I think we got it, both the general fund, hotel motel fund, and our CDBG fund grants, those agencies that I just referenced in the grants, and the dollar amounts that are involved, which again are very significant in the way they impact our community, I think. And those are all recommended amounts in the budget. And then final comments. Our budget is 1,000 plus pages, 1,004, 1,008, something I can't remember now. Obviously, these 20 or so slides that I went through did not highlight every single page in the budget or every single expenditure that is recommended. The budget is on file with the City Secretary's office, as we do each year and as we're required to do. It's also on our website at www.templetex.gov, and so you can go to the website, click on that link, and it'll take you there. From this date forward, again, from a budget calendar standpoint, August 10th is your next public hearing on the tax rate. We'll also announce the meeting to adopt the tax rate, and then the 16th and the 30th in the next 2 meetings. Next slide. And I think that was my last slide, so I will stop there, be happy to address questions. And also, of course, Ms. Bernard is here, as well as some staff members if we want to talk about any individual areas. Council, I want to say thanks to Ms. Bernard, her staff, and finance for the work that they do every year in going through our budget process, as well as all the departments and the staff that work in their individual areas to put these budgets together. It is a big thing that we do each year and throughout the year, and I appreciate the work and effort that the staff does in that regard. Council, also want to say thanks to you for your work in the budget process each year. Also, the guidance you provide, the leadership you provide in the July time frame, but even before that, back into February, when we talk about strategic plans, strategic resources, and the guideposts, fence posts that you give me during that time frame really do work well as we go through the process, and we use those throughout the process. So I want to thank you for your work and time, energy, and effort in that. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. Council, questions for David or Jesse, anything you wanted to add? Yes, sir. Yes. Let me add my word thanks to David and all the staff and the council. It's a Herculean effort every year. It just takes so much time, but so much effort and diligence on behalf of the citizens of this community to provide very, very high-value services at a very, what I hope is a cost-effective rate for our citizens, and I think reflected in the decisions to live and work in this community every day, I think, is a reflection of the satisfaction by our community. So thanks to all of you for all that you do every day for this community on our behalf. This item requires a public hearing, and I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to come before the council related to the budget for 2012-2013, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments. And this is just the first of a couple of different public hearings. So, seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Item 4B is action related to setting a proposed tax rate. And so this is to discuss the proposed tax rate and consider adopting a resolution scheduling the adoption of the proposed tax rate for August 30th, setting the tax rate for August 30th of 2012. Mr. Blackburn?
Just very briefly, this, again, you just conducted your initial public hearing on the 12-13 budget, complies with state and charter requirements that must be met before a budget can be adopted by council. A second public hearing on the budget will be conducted on August 30th, a special council meeting prior to the adoption of the budget. And then again, you do have some very specific statutory language that we must follow in regard to the proposed tax rate or the preliminary tax rate. And that should be in front of you also. And be happy to address any questions or let Ms. Bernard kind of walk you through the specifics of this item. Just as a reminder, the preliminary tax rate that you set tonight can be adjusted downward if you choose to do so at subsequent meetings, but you cannot go upward from this moment forward.
Mr. Blackburn did cover the details on the tax rate very clearly in his presentation. Just might repeat again, 2 public hearings. This resolution establishes those August 10th and August 16th, and then final adoption on August 30th. Your proposed tax rate currently proposed has 2 components. The maintenance and operations, 0.33 cents, and then interest and sinking, which will support the TCIP of 0.2564 for a total tax rate of 0.5864.
Very good, thank you. Any comments or questions by the council? If not, once again, council, we have very specific language relating to 2 separate motions, and you have those in front of you. Would certainly entertain a motion at this time for action. Item 4B relating to the scheduling of the public hearings and the adoption of the proposed tax rate for August 30th of 2012. First motion, please.
Take a motion to adopt resolution setting the proposed tax rate of .5864 per $100 in value and scheduling the adoption of the proposed tax rate for the August 30th, 2012 special council meeting.
Motion from Mayor Pro Tem Dunn. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Morales. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Councilmember Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. And a second motion. Council, it's your pleasure.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution setting the public hearings on the proposed tax rate of .5864 per $100 in value for 8:30 a.m. August 10th, 2012, special city council meeting, and 5 p.m. August 16th, 2012, regular city council meeting.
We have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Dunn. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Cloud. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Councilmember Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 5 is our consent agenda this evening. That all items listed under this section consent are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member, and it will be considered separately. This is item 5A through J this evening. I believe we want to remove item 5E. For voting purposes. Council, any other items that you wish to be removed from the consent agenda for presentation or voting purposes? If not, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda, item 5A through J, less item 5E.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through D, skipping over item E, and then F through J.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Councilmember Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 5E is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a renewal lease agreement with Bell County Help Center for the lease of space in the Public Services Building. Mr. Graham?
I think we just put this item just
For voting purposes. Okay, all right, great. Is there a motion for the renewal of the lease agreement with the Bell County Help Center?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Councilmember Morales.
Abstain.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 6 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of a .67-acre tract of land located at 4521 Parkside Drive. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The next 2 items, I'll make some general comments about both of them. or the acquisition of 2 tracts of land adjacent to our water plant. Item 6 is to adopt a resolution which would authorize the purchase of a .6-acre tract of land located at 4521 Parkside Drive. That is a tract that is adjacent to our membrane plant. When we built that plant, we tried to acquire that property. It wasn't available at that time, and we are recommending the acquisition of that property for the amount of $16,000. If you approve this resolution, we will proceed with trying to close on the property, and we'll do our survey and due diligence and proceed to closing if everything is in order. And do recommend approval of this, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Council, any questions on item 6? If not, I entertain a motion for item 6, which is the resolution authorizing the purchase of the land as described at 4521 Parkside Drive.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second for approval of the purchase of land for $16,000. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Councilmember Morales. Aye. Mayor Jones.
Aye. And item 7 is consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of a .213-acre tract of land located at 4910 Parkside Drive. Mr. Grant?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second parcel, and it is as he said, a .213-acre tract of land located at 4910 Parkside Drive, which is located in close proximity to our existing water plant. And if you approve this resolution, we will do the same thing, get a survey of the property, do our due diligence, and if everything's in order, proceed with closing of that property at a price of $15,000. And we do recommend your approval of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. We have a item for purchase of another tract of land at 4910 Parkside Drive. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Councilmember Morales. Aye. Mayor Jones.
Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the regular agenda for this evening's meeting. However, there is a subsequent meeting. The council members for the City of Temple serve as the City of Temple Employee Benefits Trust. And with the adjournment of the Temple City Council meeting, I will call for the convening of the City of Temple Employee Benefits Trust meeting. That agenda is to conduct a meeting of the City of Temple Benefits Trust to purchase insurance policies from MetLife for dental insurance for 2012-2013, MetLife for basic life, AD&D accidental death and dismemberment and voluntary life for fiscal year 2012-2013, Avisus for voluntary vision insurance for fiscal year 2012 and 13, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas for medical and prescription insurance for fiscal year 2012 and to 2013, and FBS NBS for voluntary supplemental insurance for fiscal year 2012-2013. Mr. Stoneoak.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, staff, and honored guests. I'm Randy Stoner, and I'm the City of Temple Director of Human Resources. In the item before the Employee Benefits Trust this evening, staff recommends that the trust consider adopting a resolution to approve the following coverages for our employees and retirees. Next slide, please. Regarding the dental care piece, the trust has awarded a contract to MetLife in 2011. MetLife has performed well, therefore staff recommends a one-year council extension. The benefits will remain the same, and the city will contribute at the same rate as last year. $55,756 has been budgeted for current employee coverage for FY 2012-2013. And I say for current employees because you'll see in a separate piece in a few minutes where retirees are funded under a separate pot. Next slide, please. Basic life, AD&D, and voluntary life, the city provides at no cost to its employees basic life and accidental death and dismemberment. Voluntary life, of course, is picked up on the employee's own. The trust awarded a contract for these coverages to MetLife in 2011 Again, MetLife performed well and staff recommends a one-year contract extension. The benefits will remain the same. City will contribute at the same rate as last year. $43,550 has been budgeted for basic life for fiscal year 2012-2013, and $9,189 has been budgeted for accidental death and dismemberment. And again, voluntary life, there is no cost to the city for that. Next slide, please. Voluntary vision. Last year, the trust has awarded a contract to Avisus. Avisus has performed well, therefore staff recommends a one-year contract extension. And these benefits remain essentially the same. They're actually a little bit better than last year. Last year there was a $10 copay for materials, and that's, for example, if you had your lenses exchanged in your glasses, you would have had a $10 copay. Well, that's been eliminated for this year, so it's actually a little bit better. And this contract has no direct cost to the city. Next slide, please. Medical and prescription insurance. The trust awarded a contract to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas in 2011 for a partially self-funded medical plan. Partially self-funded in that fully funded, we would take care of everything, but we have a stop loss of $125,000 insurance policy, which we purchase separately, and so we only fund up to that point of liability. And Blue Cross Blue Shield has performed well for us, therefore staff recommends a one-year contract extension. The benefits remain the same. Admin costs have increased slightly, less than 1%. Premium costs, however, have increased 28% for the city and for employees, 25% for retirees, and the city's contribution for retirees increases from the $170 per month that it was last year to $200 per month this year. $2,147,821 has been budgeted for employees for fiscal year 2012-2013, and $119,270 has been budgeted for medical and prescription insurance and dental insurance. Remember, previously I said we'd pick that part up later for retirees under 65. Next slide, please. Regarding voluntary supplemental insurances, these are cancer insurance, critical illness insurance, accidental disability insurance, hospital confinement gap insurance, intensive care insurance, short-term disability insurance, and flexible spending accounts, FSAs. The city put out an RFP and received 13 full and partial proposals. The staff and our consultant Brooke Sunday from City County Benefits reviewed these proposals based on objective criteria, which you have in your packets. And at the end of this review, we have recommended Financial Benefits Services, FBS, and its FSA subcontractor, NBS. All of these insurances would be picked up by the employees on their own, and this contract would have no direct cost to the city. Next slide, please. Subject to your questions, folks, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, sir.
Members of the committee, any questions for Mr. Stone on this item? If not, then entertain a motion for approval as a member of the trust. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for purchase of the insurance policies as indicated, as outlined by Mr. Stoner. Any further discussion by the trustees? If not, Madam Secretary, call the roll of the trustees, please.
Mr. Cloud?
Aye.
Mr. Dunn?
Aye.
Mr. Schneider?
Aye.
Ms. Morales? Aye. Mr. Jones?
Aye. And ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the meeting of the City of Temple Employee Benefits Trust, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening. Good night.